Yes, sure did.
Where'd you switch? I was like,
not like freezing in here. So feel free to turn down the AC.
I've been told it goes over well. I hear that goes well.
Okay, your grandma.
Yes. So in theory, that water is heated.
I went through a couple of scoops of ice cream on my way out. I'm like, you know what's iced coffee better? Ice cream.
Just so I have work in there.
She say how no.
How's garden club? How's garden club?
I
I'm
want
seeing the kids come out with their sleepy.
We're gonna go straight.
I'm so excited. They love it. I love that. It's so fun. I get these little canisters of like scatter seeds.
Everyone.
So I planted some just like a few days ago, and like, oh my God, and the kids are so excited. Until they run the bikes into it. She's got the baby canisters. Yep.
Just text and see how much.
That's part of the range too, though. That was, wanted to see that.
All right. 1.1, call to order open session. I'd like to call to order the October 17, 2023 Governing Board Trustees Special Meeting Governance Workshop at 5:33 p.m. 2.1 approval agenda. Is there a motion to approve the agenda? Is there a second? All those in favor? Aye. Motion to approve the agenda passes. 3.1, public input concerning items on the agenda. Is there any public input concerning the agenda? There is not. So we are at 4.1, governance workshop, budgeting, or budget and visions workshop.
Good evening. This is the second of two workshops that we've had over the last couple of months to discuss the district budget and priorities. On September 21st, we had a workshop on capital programs and Measure M, and tonight we're following up on that meeting with a workshop regarding our district budget and priorities. So since the September 21st workshop, we have had a chance to go out and engage with our community and staff regarding some of the topics being discussed around priorities, and to get some input and have further discussion with our staff and community. So we're looking forward to updating the board this evening and having further discussion on our priorities. I'll turn it over to Chris.
Thanks, Kim. So this evening, we will really have two main objectives. We'll review the budget workshop from September 21st, and then we'll review and discuss current and potential priorities. So we've got some more information based on feedback from the board at the last meeting that we're able to bring forward. Looking at the agenda, again, we'll recap that September budget workshop. We'll look at district priorities, and we'll focus on priorities for fiscal responsibility, some of the things that we maintain for that fiscal responsibility that we prioritize, our current program priorities that we have, and some unfunded priorities that were brought up, or potential priorities, and then talk about direction and next steps. So we'll have a truncated recap of the September 21st budget workshop, and in that meeting, our objective was to understand the current realities of the district facilities program, discuss our unforeseen and potential needs, and then review enrollment and capacity updates, and discuss potential budget implications and share information about how that might impact the district going forward. So we had the agenda to look at all those items, and we really looked at the updating of measurement projects budgets, and so compared it from 2020, where we were at with budgets, to 2020 to current, and we found that we were over $54 million unfunded from just measuring them. And then we broke it out to look at all of our other facilities funds that we had, and when we put those all together, we have a little over $34 million. And as we shared, things like deferred maintenance, in an ideal world, we wouldn't use those for these projects because we'd be using that after the fact, but if we had all in, we'd be about $20 million under the need. And then the budget variances, and we looked at where we were in 2020 to where we are now. Del Mar Heights, as we shared, is about $20 million over budget, and we associate that with litigation and delays and escalations. Sky School was over by $2 million. We also had Del Mar Hills Academy modernization that was over by $5.6 million at the cost if we move students off campus. Obviously, that would go up a little bit if we decided to have students on campus for the longer duration. That delay with the Del Mar Heights litigation, also escalation and some of the scope increase. And then the other projects combined were a little over $20 million, $21 million that had the combination of delays with the Del Mar Heights litigation and the overall escalation when we look at the whole bond program. I was just on a call yesterday, and there was a figure of 18% construction escalation in some areas in 2022. And so it just highlighted again the impact of those couple of years that we went through. And then we talked, and we wanted to restate the highly effective bond program management and what we focus on. So we use good consultants to help us with projections, and we look at things like enrollment. We also look at cost estimating. We work with the consultants and our construction teams to help us to come up with numbers that are going to help us to understand where we are now and where we will be as we go down the line. Community engagement is a key consideration, something that we prioritize district-wide from the board, from staff, and the community, as we talked about our facilities master plan development, where we went through the process of identifying how many schools, where the schools would be across the district, and we came to a conclusion between staff and the board and the community that we would have 9 community schools, and we would modernize Del Mar Hills, rebuild Del Mar Heights, and build the new Pacific Sky School. And that was a very in-depth process. We have our Citizens Oversight Committee, which meets quarterly. We go through a design process with every school site. Del Mar Hills, we had 4 community meetings, and we've had a couple more that were related to the potential student relocation. And monthly board updates, as you know, that we share on our facility update every month. And then we just received the San Diego County Taxpayers Report Card, and we had 25 out of 27. There are 2 items that we cannot achieve based on decisions that are requirements that they have that are beyond what we do, beyond the pale. But 25 out of 27 is an A, and so we continue to achieve that 25 out of 27. We have a AAA rating from Moody's twice, and again, we cannot control litigation and cost escalation. And then we shared about the Del Mar Hills Academy modernization and the 2 options, and you'll remember there is phased on-site, which would likely take about 2 years, and it comes in close to $30 million. We move students off-site. We should be able to do that in 2 summers and a school year. and that would come in around $25.5 million. And per the conversation that we had at the last update, we went out and we had meetings with the Delmar Hills community and then one with the community as a whole. And I actually went to a CLW and spoke to staff as well. So we were able to have a chance to present, share a slightly trimmed down version of what we shared with the board at the budget workshop, get input. And we really framed that around what questions do you have based on the information we've shared? What considerations should we be considering? What should we be thinking about? And do you have a sense of where you think that we should be going? And so there were a lot of questions around the potential locations for offsite satellite campuses. And understandably, people wanted to know where students would go. We shared that right now we are still looking, and there are probably a number of school sites, and so we're refining that, and we'll continue to do that. And we also shared with the community that we want to be part of the process with the community. And so should we do an offsite, we'll be going back out to the community to talk about where we're landing on student location and making sure that we're getting, again, the questions and considerations and items that we need to take into. Whether the school site will have to be split. And so there were questions around, could we have all of Delmar Hills in one spot? And it looks unlikely that we could get all of that school into one school site with another school. But that was a question that came up a number of times. And if they're split, what grades will be at what sites? So that's obviously an enrollment item that comes down to how many classrooms do we have at the other sites. And so there's a little bit of, we're starting to work on that, but knowing exactly where we are will, I think we'll be close, but there may be things that come up with enrollment in the spring, especially when we look at potentially having students on Delmar Heights campus. So there are those considerations involved as well. They asked us to consider keeping K through 4th grade together so that all of SLIP is on one site, but do so that the SLIP program and the English only classes are together. So there were conversations through the 2 meetings about, could we consider having SLIP only pulled off? And then there were further conversations. It was interesting, we had families who went to the Delmar Hills meeting and then came to the meeting at Torrey Hills and said, we talked to some other people. We really would want to make sure that we have our English-only students and our SLIP students together because we have kids who, kindergarten, Dad was sharing, I have a kindergarten, we had a birthday party, and there are kids from both classes, and so making sure that those friendships are maintained. So that was an interesting consideration that came up and information that came out of those conversations. And then generally the community favored having students offsite for construction. There are a lot of questions, and so I think that there was a feeling that to say definitively was, I think, hard for people, but the feedback we got centered around more and more of offsite makes more sense than onsite. There were some concerns about construction offsite during the 2 years, the length of time, and then obviously concerns about having to move, and that piece of it came up as well.
Can I ask you a couple questions? So how well attended were the 2 sessions?
We had probably 20 to 25 people at each.
And the one for Delmar Hills, were there any strong advocates for the on-site option? And if so, what were some of the?
There wasn't very strong advocacy for on-site. There were questions about it. There were some concerns about the demo and other things that might go on. I didn't, but there also wasn't a strong sentiment. I think that there were a lot of questions about we'd like more information. And so I think that was a big part of the feedback as well as it feels early to ask us to make this decision because we have, or to give you an input on one side or the other because these questions are not fully fleshed out.
Chris, I just want to thank you and the team for doing all this outreach. We talked about this at the last meeting and thought it would be helpful to go out and get the pulse of the community on this, even though the board doesn't have a lot of information on it already. So you guys did that and I really appreciate it.
So then we also shared enrollment projections and impacts, and then I'll let Brian talk a little bit to the enrollment projections and pieces that we talked about there.
Yeah, so we've been continuing to monitor our enrollment, and that's why we came to the board in the summer, recognizing that the enrollment that we were anticipating for this school year was not materializing. And so from that, within the business services department, they are budgeting and looking at continuing staff and looking at sections of FTEs. And so they budgeted for 177 FTEs in 23-24, in 24-25, and in 25-26. And then this year was we were recognizing that we weren't getting as high a capture rate within our kindergarten students coming in. And so in reality, we ended up with a total of 173 sections this year, which means there was a projected difference of 4 FTEs not realized from what we budgeted for versus what actually came to school. So when we look at an average teacher cost of $143,000, we're then seeing a savings on FTEs not spent of $572,000. Then working with Davis, we then asked them to try and do their best projections, looking at a number of scenarios as far as what would happen if we were to continue to experience a very low capture rate, and with the 59% that we captured in this current year. And then also asked them around a projection, well, what might it look like if it was at a more historical rate at 76? And so there you'll see, as we move on into 24, 25, you'll see those two ends of the continuum, so to speak. So if we were to go back to a more historical capture rate, then we would anticipate in 24, 25, we would then be looking at 169 sections, which would then represent a difference of 8 sections between, we budgeted for 177, but we're realizing 169. So the potential savings then of 1.1. And then conversely, if we should continue to see a trend of a lower capture rate, then we would be looking at a saved difference of FTEs of 12. And then as well, looking out to 25, we would then see a potential savings of 1.5, up to if there's a low capture rate that continues at 2.5.
Ryan, is that based upon the 143,000 for all the years?
It is, and so.
Does it include step and column adjustments?
Correct, it doesn't include step and column. This is really just that matter of looking at basic projections at this point in time. So it wouldn't include things such as step and column, any raises that should happen to be negotiated during a period of time.
Okay, so those are basically overstated then,
That's
by
right.
definition.
Yes. Yeah, simply for the purpose of projections at this point.
So is the takeaway that the conservative estimate is the high capture at 1.1 in the next year and 1.5 to 1.6 in the next year? Is that the notion? Versus a more optimistic, the low capture is, a lot more goodness potential, but if I'm conservative, I go with a high capture number.
Depending on which angle you go with goodness in. I mean, it's with regard to how many classroom, what we expect our expenditures to be for staffing and for FTE. So correct. So if we said another way to make sure I'm understanding, Alan, so if we continue to experience a low capture rate, then we would anticipate having fewer students coming into the district, which then means greater variance between what we projected for and budgeted for versus how many staff members we need to.
So I'm just thinking about the savings line. So if one estimate of savings in the 24 to 25 high capture is 1.1 million.
Yes.
And then the next year is projected to be 1.573. And then the next year, is this going to be ongoing at a rate that, might be close to this?
It might be close to that. There also is that question of whether or not we'll start to see it stabilize as we go further out. At this point in time, as we were looking at the immediate projections, we were only trying to project out 3 years at this point in time, just as we're aware that as we start looking at longer term projections, they become less accurate for us. But at this point in time, looking at the 3 years, that's the trend that we see.
I think one of the conversations we all had a couple months ago getting ready for this was, is there savings that's sustainable and reliable and that we can rely on to then make some decisions of where we could have some budget priorities? So am I right to sort of bring that together, that can we sort of rely on 1.5 million in savings in the out years and then figure out what can we do with that savings?
Yes, I think you can rely on that, because when we look at the enrollment projections, we would see it flattening, but we wouldn't, based on where we are right now and the birth rates that we have to use to project what kindergarten enrollment will be, we do not expect over the next 5 to 7 years to see a big uptick in enrollment. And so I think you could anticipate that you would have, in a conservative look, Alan, with that 1.6 million. If you project out and we continue to decline enrollment, then that could expand a little bit. But it does not look, based on the projections we have right now, that we would be having the enrollment rise over the next 4 or 5 years. So we would expect that to be conservatively somewhere in that range to be what you would have to use it. So another item that was asked about was looking at our district-wide capacity, really thinking after we're done with the bond program. So this is a variation of a slide we had last time. We have the first top little table is 2018-19, that's before we started work. So we had 303 total classrooms, we had 38 total portables, and so in the end, we were using 303 classrooms. A number of more portables, but that was our total classroom count. This year we have 297, we still have a number of portables across the district, and our total out portables would be 271, but really that 297 is the classroom inventory that we have. And when we complete the bond program, and when we remove all portable classrooms, we will have 293 permanent classrooms. And when we use portable classrooms to inflate or add to that, we would actually have 10 less classrooms district-wide than we had when we started the bond program because of the number of portables. When you look at 38 portable classrooms is a school site that we're be removing over the course of time of the bond program. So we really, by the board prioritizing removing portables, it does take and move from having 8 schools that had some that were larger and some that were inflated with portables. For example, Delmar Heights was for a period of time, Sage Canyon was, it has a number of portables on it. And reducing that makes it more of the community school idea that came out through that 2018 FMP and create schools that are basically 9 schools that have the same general capacity overall of the 8 schools that we had in 1819.
But I think we also said last time, or at least I said, that when it comes to like ASP, or some non-day classrooms, that's not necessarily a priority in terms of those portables.
Absolutely. And so,
Especially if it's gonna open up space for TK.
and so it is still listed as, we have it listed in there as one of the potential priorities that, and so that's something that we have a little more information about that the board can discuss as well related to that program specifically.
Yeah, and then just just a point of clarification about keeping a portable with the presumption that you're gonna be able to use it in the future, then you're creating a future liability for a future board, because a portable will have to be in the future replaced if you're counting on using that space in the future, or a new building will have to replace it. So it's not costless to assume that you're gonna use a portable just because you can use it for 10 years, assuming you can use it for 20 or 30 years.
Are you including in your definition of portables, the portables that are seemingly permanent at Ocean Air?
I'm not. So there are some that we have, what I'm including in our definition of portable are the raised ones that have not been put into a slab and built and stucco sided and built in a manner that can sustain more than 20 years. So we have those at, a couple of those at CDM, and we've modernized them, and they're in good shape. We have them at Ocean Air, and we have them at Torrey Hills. So those we're not including as portables. What I'm including is what we had at Delmar Heights, what we have at Delmar Hills, what we have at Sage Canyon, where you have it on the raised section, and it's truly put in so that you could remove it again.
You can hook it to a tray.
Yep. But if we've created a concrete pad and set it up to be permanently reside in a space, and we've maintained it in a manner, we have a number of those, not a lot, but a number of those around the district that we can maintain at a higher level and continue to use for classrooms over a longer period of time.
And those are included in the 290.
Those are included in the 293, correct?
Do we have portables that could be transformed into that
No.
level?
The state that they are in would not. You would need to do that at the beginning and set them up in the beginning. The ones that we have all of them are somewhere in the range of 18 to 25 years old, and portable's lifespan is at best 20 years. And so when you get to that, and our maintenance department does a great job of maintaining and doing the best, but they're just not built unless you set them up in a manner and they can go.
That was my question. So the lifetime of portable, could you say that, or you said again, like what is the lifetime of portable generally, and then what are the how long are they right now, how aged are they right now?
So the ones that we brought in, and most of these were brought in the late 90s, give or take, early 2000s, and there was a lot of development in the district. So they are all hitting about 20 years or more of age. And the lifespan is typically 15, 20, maybe 25 years. And so if you look at the ones at Sage Canyon, I taught one of the ones at Sage Canyon for a number of years, and they're they're just not made to last for the quality of the construction. So if you go in and you say, we're gonna put it on a certain concrete pad, we're gonna pay a little bit more for the interior to be done in a manner that can last, and then you can have something that would be at a better quality like we did at Ocean.
So actually, to Erica's point, it's not really a future liability issue, it's a current.
Yeah,
or
Yeah.
issue.
it's a promise. What I underline is that you're right to look at it without portables, the analysis that you do.
So next we'll move into district priorities, and we're going to share a little bit about some priorities.
Yes, we have several district priorities currently to maintain fiscal responsibility, one of which being our post-employment benefits and that contribution that happens annually for $100,000. In addition, we have our deferred maintenance contribution annually that is currently at 1% every year, and for 22-23 we have $605,000 contribution for deferred maintenance. Special education continues to remain underfunded, and there's a general fund contribution of about 60% annually, and for 22-23 is $5.8 million. And for our unrestricted reserve balance, we have $17.9 million. For 22-23, leaving us at the 24.3% in reserve. And this is a look at our special education funding, our federal revenue that is received, state revenue, and also that 5.8 contribution from our general fund, which is again that 60% for 22-23. And just highlighting some of the uses of our reserves, we previously talked about the safety net aspect of our reserves and one-time funds that are hard to replenish. We are a community funded district, and those averages for 21-22 are outlined there, as well as the state aid districts. And the metric for credit rating, we have a AAA Moody's credit rating, and that our reserve percentage played into receiving that rating.
But for comparison, community funded district is at 29-point-something% there, 23, what is our reserve?
Our
24.3.
24.3.
So this is the average statewide. Schools for Science Finance ran some numbers for us, and these are the averages statewide for the 21-22 school year.
So we're 5% below other similar districts.
And
in
all
our
those districts
reserve.
have TK. Amazing.
Half our money, it's like.
And then a historical comparison year to year for our STEAM Plus program. For 22-23, we have total FTE of 30.7. And our contribution from the foundation was 1.3 million. And also our STEAM Plus program includes our science, music, arts, integration, specialist, PE, and Spanish.
And I just would note too, so just looking at this, I think it shows how the district funds the STEAM Plus. So the district really does fund the bulk of the STEAM program, and we fund somewhere between 65 and 70% on an annual basis. And it puts really that funding is what ensures that we have enough, so we have the planning time and the programs across the district. And the foundation does an amazing job of putting it over the top so that we have that extra funding that allows us to have such a robust and full program. But it does get lost sometimes outside of these rooms that there is quite a substantial contribution from the district that goes towards STEAM Plus as well.
So the last column is actually flipped, I'm assuming. So the district obligation, or the 1.3 is really.
Yeah, that is flipped.
Foundation. But we're seeing that if you go across, the district obligation is 2.6, 2.5, 2.6, 2.7.
Yes.
And now we're up to 2.8.
All right, we continue to maintain our small class size for 25-to-1 ratio in our upper grades for 77 FTE. If we were to move into a 27-to-1 ratio for the upper grades, that would equate to 72 total FTE, which is a difference of that 5 FTE. The budget impact there would be approximately $715,000 for that difference.
Sorry, where are we currently?
25-to-1 ratio.
Okay, so you're suggesting if we were to add 2, then it would be 700,000.
Yeah, just trying to quantify what is the cost of that priority and maybe break it down to 25 to 1.
Another priority has been our 6th grade Spanish, and that came back with an additional cost of $705,000 for the 23-24 fiscal year. And that includes 6 of our Spanish teachers.
Would we not have teachers in that capacity if there was no Spanish program, we still have those 6th graders, those teachers, right?
You know, these teachers just teach Spanish. They do,
No, I
Spanish.
understand that, but in terms of the number of students, would we not have teachers for those students, maybe that aren't Spanish speakers or teachers? We'd still have teachers though.
Well, they already have their general ed teacher, and this is an extra teacher that provides just Spanish instruction for a period of time.
But not the immersion.
It's not the immersion program.
Okay.
Yeah, you're probably thinking, because in the past, when we were looking at STEAM Plus, we're always talking about the idea that when the kids were in STEAM Plus, the classroom teachers were somewhere else, and so that their time was free up to do their prep period or what have you. Maybe, is that not what's happening now? Are the classroom teachers in class with the Spanish speaking?
So our 6th grade Spanish teachers, correct, they're different than our SLIP program. And they're different than our primary Spanish STEAM Plus program also. So these teachers, these 3 6th grade Spanish teachers only teach Spanish to our 6th graders at all schools. It is part of their STEAM, it's a combination of a STEAM Plus time and then a time where their teacher is present and part of that learning.
The board has also prioritized the intervention and supports, which include our counselors, intervention specialists, TOSAs, professional learning. All of that come at a cost of approximately $1.4 million, which is currently supplemented by one-time funds. However, those funds will run out over the coming years, and those are outlined there for 23-24, all the way through 25-26. Those one-time restricted funds that are available. And that includes our learning recovery block grant and educator effectiveness block grant as well. So the general fund will supplement the difference there.
Can you spend another minute on that? So you're saying that right now it's covered with block grants, but that block grants are going to run out, so then in out years you're projecting those expenditures still. If you're planning to have the counselors still here in those out years, but if you're planning right now in the current budget for that cost to come out of the general fund.
Yes, to maintain.
And so some are already in the general fund, because as you can see for this year, only half of that will be covered by one-time funds. So some have already been absorbed into the general fund, and then this is something that is happening statewide when you look at those one-time funds and then falling off. So you hear people talking about a fiscal cliff both at the moment, but also with one-time funds happening. So we're planning proactively for how we can maintain programs and then wean off one-time funds to maintain the interventions that have been successful in our state.
It would suggest to me that like in 2 years that we're going to need an additional $1 billion for intervention supports.
Well, I know that it's also building, so we know the one-time funds that we have, and so we're accounting for some additional costs as we budget out over the next couple of years. We're expecting to absorb, like, we see this coming, and we're accounting for it.
I guess how are we because I guess kind of to Alan's point earlier that there's a certain amount that we're kind of, I don't know, are we talking about that certain amount that we're talking about with Alan, or is there additional that you're thinking about somehow that could, for instance, go towards this, which looks like, again, like to me, it's still about $1 million now. Yeah.
So when we look at, in the budget, budget. There are also some increases in property tax we see over the couple of years that are more than we see in 7Com. So we would be able to support over this year, next year, and even in 25, 26. It's something we are able to absorb these in as long as, without really touching much of what Alan was talking about. These are priorities that we're already looking at as we move forward, how do these fit in? And so this is a current priority that we are fitting into our budget over the next 2 years.
I would also like to see like a further breakdown of the counselors, intervention specialists, the TOSAs, the professional learning, total cost of those 4 items is $1.4 million annually. How much is it for the counselors? How much is it for the intervention specialists? How much is it for the TOSAs? How many TOSAs do we have? How many intervention specialists do we have? How many counselors do we have? And then professional learning, I'd like to see, more breakdown of what that includes. Does that also include travel expenses? Does that also include, what is encompassed in professional learning? It's a very broad topic.
Within that information, currently we have 7 counselors and 2 intervention specialists and also 2 TOSAs. So we can definitely have
So moving on to some areas that we've discussed that we're currently unfunded, we did do a little bit more work, and we will actually have a presentation, and maybe folks will be here at the board meeting next week to talk about our CMS program. But just looking at satellite kitchens, some of the components are including 3-compartment sinks, hand-washing areas, and food prep sinks, refrigeration, and heating. Those are the number of the pieces that we need to build it out to meet health codes that you can serve out of those spaces, as well as to be able to have the cold stuff you need and to keep things warm as you need. I reached out to Twin Cities, who just has done some modernizations of some of their satellite kitchens. And Solana Beach, we were actually just at a ribbon cutting for one of their schools, and they had redone a kitchen. They do individual kitchens, so it was a little bit more, but I was able to get some information. Based on feedback from those 2 districts, it looks like we'd be somewhere in the range of $700,000 to $1 million, depending on the layout of the site, to build a satellite kitchen.
How much of this is covered by the federal dollars that we're receiving as part of the food program?
Right now, we don't have enough to cover the food program itself, and so should we become considerably profitable over time, you could put some money back into it, but I'm not sure how profitable our program will get over time.
I'm just wondering, the enterprise fund that we have money in, is that money that we can use for other expenditures like this, or?
Typically, we use the enterprise fund for things related to so it would have to relate to either the after-school program or the CDC program to spend that. So if there was a nexus we could make to after-school program and need for satellite kitchens, potentially, but you'd have to be able to make some nexus to how that was supporting that program.
So if you wanted to fund these, where would you look for funds? Which would you be looking at for facilities funds here?
I don't have a funding source for it. I think this is one, though, that I don't think that if we're looking at the totality, looking at the program, when we're talking about priorities, we needed to bring it up, because we were looking at the need of the school sites as we're starting the program. It would be, when we're looking at the big picture, we need to know that this is something that is missing. And so, I say that because we also have $20 million that I don't have a perfect answer for you for what we get for the other facilities program. I'm saying there's $7 million more that potentially is needed. So I don't have a good answer for you. But then I also know that when you look at districts across the state, across the county, we're at a point where we need to start updating the facilities master plan, where we've got enough done with Pacific Sky and Delma Heights that that is the next step that we take over the course of this year. Most facilities master plans have more work than you can fund, and it's a way to track what do we need to get done and what the timeline to get that done. And then we can look at other funding options. Is there a way to make a access to our after-school program? We need to do something and then we can figure out what that next step is.
We do have a kitchen at the Sky, and we'll have a kitchen at Delmar Heights.
More like a satellite kitchen, it's a smaller one. So Delmar Heights and Pacific Sky will have these satellite kitchens. So you could do things like, for example, our pizza oven. If you use the pizza oven that we have, you would then have to cut all the pizza, put it in something, wrap it, and send it out. And if you have it in a satellite kitchen, you can have pizza, or you can have spaghetti, you can have meals that can be sent, and you cut down on the packaging, you're allowing us to do some scratch cooking and other things that's healthier. Those are the pieces that Jamie will be able to speak a little bit better than I do, but are the pieces that we look to, it would potentially be a better program if you're able to serve the food in a fresher manner instead of having it prepackaged and sent out that way. So I think that's where ideally you would have a satellite kitchen in each school to be able to serve what's best created in the same kitchen.
Side note, I was just gonna ask, do you think facilities management plan needs to be updated at this point, or is it still?
Yes, we're at a time where and we probably would have done so a little bit earlier, but there were a lot of unknowns with Delmar Heights for a little while. And so getting that into a much more known situation allows us to project out in a much better manner. So that we've really been intending to have the conversation with the board, and we wanted to come. This was around the time where we had a good idea of Delmar Heights to talk about where we got the facility program anyway. And so then this conversation helps us to then move forward with updating that. So another area that's currently unfunded are the ASB ECBC offices. So just to give a little bit more information, we relocated Ashley Falls ASB ECBC offices and programs. Currently there are 5 portables and 2 pre-K classrooms that are in the main Ashley Falls building. If the portables were removed, we would need some office space, a workroom, and right now we have a 3-4 age classroom that's in there. And so there would be need for at least 3, give or take, classroom sized spaces, potentially some storage as well. But that's, we don't have that planned in to be able to replace those portables. And if we were to remove those portables, there'd really be about a 3 classroom need, give or take, to move that program into another space. And then we updated a breakdown on transitional kindergarten. And so we have another slide where we can talk about consideration for transitional kindergarten, some more information. But when we looked at transitional kindergarten, if transitional kindergarten fills out over the years, based on today's numbers, we have kindergarten classes that are typically a little bit smaller than first grade classes. And in our conversations, we would expect our TK costs, overall class of students, to probably be a little bit smaller than our kindergarten class. So we took that and said, let's look at 80% of our kindergarten enrollment. That would give us 290 students based on this year's numbers. We have 20 classes, so that would give us 16 classes of TK based on this year's numbers. And then generated out what would it be if we were to offer a full program over time. Because there was a question of, if we start small in scale, still having an idea of what would it look like potentially as a full program. So based on that, with 16 certificated teachers at $142,000, and we got $2.3 million for teacher salaries. The classified staff, we would anticipate some A2s who would cost about $55,000 a piece, which would come in at almost $880,000. We put a number on substitutes based on sick days and professional learning, so that would be about $43,000. And then just the general materials number that we used the last time. So all in for the staffing of the site is $3.2 million. There still is, if the board directs to move forward with TK, and needs to look at the curriculum and the timing of the day and a number of things that Allison and her department especially would need some time to focus on and develop. And we have a little bit more on TK consideration on the next slide. This would be looking at it as potentially what a full program might look like from a annual cost just for the staffing and at the site.
It's always been my understanding that the staffing has been this unknown piece. What are we looking at in terms of cost? I mean, in terms of the Yeah.
And so, when we look at,
Speaking of the ocean air portable, if we went that route, to get bathrooms, I'm not talking about a full-on construction of the building, the bathroom, that would be a compromise to consider as well.
so there's a number of ways you can go about, this, at 16, we have 20 kindergarten classrooms. When we're built out, we should have about 30 classrooms with restrooms, so there would be a number short. And TK will certainly need to have classrooms with restrooms. And then you can either build spaces, or if you, there's gonna be fluctuations each year. We do have sites where we've had 2 classrooms share a restroom as well as follows. So could be consideration for something of that manner if we have enough space for all of the program. If we felt a need to build, then you cannot do portables for TK. So it would have to be for kindergarten classrooms.
We've already agreed, that's not really, is that considered a portable from this perspective?
State of California, we might consider it portable. So that's where that, I can consider how we can maintain it. The state of California will not provide any support. We would not be able to put it in as a portable for the state of California.
You have to move other kids out. You have to build portables, then move other kids into those portables, and then move the TK kids into the kindergarten classrooms.
Sorry, what's the current kindergarten enrollment this year?
364 instead of here.
I didn't bring the last presentation with me, but can you remind me how many, so you said 30, there'll be 30 classrooms available, and I think there's 20 that can take it up with kindergarten?
So
We're 21 right now, 20 and a half, so 21 classrooms per kindergarten, sure.
So I was always under the impression that you have to have bathrooms.
you have to, when you're building new classrooms for kindergarten or TK, you have to have restrooms. When we are staffing,
I get that.
when we
Not
were,
kindergarten?
well, we at our district have had kindergartens without restrooms for years. Nowhere else hasn't had restrooms for the kindergarten classrooms for years. So there are,
So there's ways to free up
the state doesn't say you, I mean, you still serve your program. So then, in the case of a school, Ashley Falls, when we have the after-school program, or the ECBC there, we had a couple of our kindergartens taken up. And so we had one that had a restroom, and we had a kindergarten classroom next to it, and we had a door between them, so we have a share of restrooms. There's ways we can look at potentially, if it's somewhere in the range of this, like 5 or 6 classrooms, it seems like we should be able to work it out. If it were, when we were looking at it as 50 classrooms, 25 each, and then you had 20 without, then we were at a place where I think we would have struggled to find, how do we get our kindergartners in a place that's as proximal to restrooms and in a manner that is fitting the program. So with the decline in the total number of sections we have in kindergarten and potentially in TK, I think we're at a spot where our classrooms with restrooms over the next 5 to 10 years will help us to get very close to the number.
And how did you get the 80% assumption for TK?
Honestly, we kind of pulled it out of the sky because we have, kindergarten is typically somewhere in the range of 10% less than first grade, maybe 10, 15, and with the younger age group, they're seeing them, right now in a lot of the neighborhood districts, it isn't fully filled, it isn't coming in, so we're making a guess.
Isn't that kind of a knowable number, like did you talk to other districts where?
Yeah, we did, so we got where they're coming in right now, but they're also projecting, because many districts haven't fully filled out their TK program. So next year is the full implementation, so there's a little bit of projection as well, in that we got input from 5 or 6 districts across the district that are basic aid. They gave us input on where they are with the TK program. We talked to local neighboring districts and what they are. So that helped us to create that number, but it's also a projection because many of them have not gotten to the point where they have the full implementation. They're not a year to implement.
Okay, so I'm a little bit nervous built out, are there any programs in the state that are built out where you can get a good number of the ratio of kindergarten to TK?
Because the age isn't yet to all 4-year-olds, so it's because of that birth date that they're really following that up to this point.
It went,
San Diego Unified just has all 4-year-olds eligible to enroll, they're not getting funding for 4-year-olds who don't qualify, but they will know right now, they're going on it to all. It just depends on the district.
okay, well then, that would put that a charge, right? So then, can we just look at San Diego?
I mean, I know for personal experience that they're at capacity at all the elementary schools, like every TK program at all elementary schools is full.
That doesn't sound.
So if you can have a maximum of, what is the limit, 20?
20 students per class.
20.
Yeah, but,
What
yeah,
I'm saying is that they have one class that's at capacity, it doesn't tell you what the ratio is, because there may be more
the
than
90%.
one. I mean, just because you have one class doesn't mean that the ratio is gonna be determined by that number. You know what I'm saying?
It just depends on how many we offer. I mean, if we offer,
And that's what I'm saying, if
Yeah.
San Diego had offered 3 classes, maybe they wouldn't be at capacity. And so, but, you know, just saying that they're at capacity doesn't tell us.
okay, we could still find a number that maybe they know how much demand there is beyond what they can support because of who's trying to sign up, or
What are
it
the
just seems
numbers?
that we can figure
Sorry,
that out.
what are the numbers that you haven't seen? I know that this one is projections, but like, what are the, you know, like you're talking about, you talked to several districts, and so what is the average that you're kind of seeing
We're
right
seeing
now?
quite a range. When we talked to some of our neighboring districts, they were coming in at somewhere in the range of 25% of their kindergarten class. Looking at, say, Carlsbad, and some of the, let's see, the numbers of TK for the other school sets. So, yeah, seeing somewhere in the range of 50%. So really, right now, we're seeing them range somewhere from 25 to about 60% of their K class, but they also, and many of these have not rolled it out to the whole, so there's,
so they're
and
hearing
and we're also having a projection. So to say it's pulled out of the air, I think is probably a little flippant. It's the fact that we're getting information from a number of districts that's a bit of a wide spectrum, and then we're having to project out because they haven't fully filled out the programs, they have another year. So there are a lot of variables, I guess, in making that number. I think that we're trying to be somewhat on the conservative side because, again, I'm seeing, just talking Carlsbad, an area where you're having 25% of the kindergarten number that was coming in, and that's, you know, a nearby district. So, I can't say for certain that we'll be capped at 80%, and maybe at some point it turns into 100% of the kindergarten program, but I, just looking at what is happening right now, and then making the comparison to the fact that kinder to first grade has very traditionally had a bump up, where we don't have as many kids who come in kindergarten as come in first grade. I think it is fair to assume that we'll have less TK students, even when it's fully filled out, than we have kindergarten students.
Is the Carlsbad program a full, what are the hours of the program?
Half day, their kindergarten is half day also.
The kindergarten and TK is half day?
That's correct.
So the other thing, if I were to try to refine that number, I'd also want to look at, and I have, because I looked at that list of all the districts that are, I focus on the ones that are basic aid, elementary school only, you know, similarly situated, the same number of elementary schools and so forth. So I think there might be some learning from some of the districts that maybe are in Northern California, that, you know, that I've researched for other reasons, not for TK. It might be worthwhile if we have the desire to find out more and just learn from them, because they may be further along in their journey than, say, some of the local districts, and they may look a lot more like our district than, say, San Diego.
I just wanted to, just it's a wonder that like if parents are not choosing, you know, for whatever reason, to use the TK in Carlsbad, just having to do
fact that it's a half-day program, they need a full-day program. If they're wanting parents, it's just a question.
Could be, and again, we're just trying to find as much information as we can.
And we did do some outreach to other districts, and it really ranged from how many classes they had. Most, they were following the birth rate, or the birth date, and just that it is expanding, continuing to grow. And then their funding varied a lot too. That several of them do have a very significant, in addition to a regular construction bond, parcel tax. So when we talk about it, it's really hard to compare even a district that seems similar to us in size and is also community funded. There are other things that make them different. So every school district has different priorities and different funding sources. So it was interesting to talk to those districts that do offer TK, and that it is continuing to grow in demand and popularity. All around the state: Palo Alto, Sunnyvale, Los Alto, Goleta.
Those are the non-California ones.
Right. So that's exactly the
Yeah.
talk that I was thinking of, that are elementary schools.
Similar to
funded,
us.
Similar number of schools.
That sounds like they have more funding, because they have a parcel tax.
They do. Some of them definitely, and just very, very big differences in pupil funding too. That are it's not comparing exact like district to another exact like district. For example, Palo Alto, they're at more than $30,000 per student funding. That's just a different amount of funding than other districts might
Sorry, how
have.
much
So
is that?
$30,000 per student above,
Okay.
more than. So,
What's that compared to those?
well, it depends. Chris, I'll let you answer that.
We're about 20, so that's a 50% increase per pupil that they get in ours. And the parcel tax. So I think there are funding differences in a number of these
And there's
districts.
a lot of districts who are funded, that are basic aid, that have less funding and very comparable funding to ours, that we're, one of 5 that doesn't fund TK.
Do you mind just briefly kind of saying what parcel tax is?
So parcel tax requires a 2/3 vote, and it is a flat rate per parcel, and can really typically be used generally for whatever the district would like to use it for, as opposed to like a GeeWah bond, which is facilities-based, and is a 55% voter approval. So you don't see very many parcel taxes passed in Southern California. It's much more regularly passed in Northern California than Southern California.
Why would you say that's the case necessarily in Southern California?
It's a little bit more liberal community-based, and so they're more willing to pass in Northern California to pass taxation.
Because it provides 2/3
And 2/3. So 2/3 is a big bar. I mean, when we passed our bond, it was about 61%, and so we had strong support for San Diego, but to get to 66.7, I mean, that's a pretty substantial increase beyond that.
Plus, it's not regular. You can spend it on programs.
Yeah.
instead of facility.
Yeah, just like I was wondering, like, we don't see those around here.
It'll come.
Yeah, that's probably why we don't see them. But that also makes sense why there's a little bit more funding there.
That's in one district. It's one, there's not more funding in all the districts.
So we'll move on and talk about some considerations. So as we were looking at TK, if TK is identified as a priority, there were some considerations that we've been hearing from the board and talking about potentially starting small or looking at a way to begin to roll out the program. One consideration could be enrollment and prioritizing free and reduced, foster youth, and homeless students. This would identify and support students who would have the greatest need. We'd anticipate, based on our percentage and looking at the number of students we have in kindergarten, 25 to 30 students who qualify based on this. We have a seat open only until they show up, and then you do a lottery for open seats. If, say, you did, that would be minimally 2 classes. If you did, say, 1, 2, 3 classrooms, and you did not fill in with this prioritization group, then you would lottery out the rest of the seats. That could be a consideration for how to enroll, especially if you're starting smaller. There are pieces that I know as we're discussing, our instructional services and HR and the whole team will have to look at with the location and the daily schedule hours and researching and selecting and purchasing a curriculum. There'll be negotiations with DMCTA related to how to implement, and we would potentially need to hire staff. So, depending on, we talked about the enrollment and changes in FTE, but we have retirements every year and other things that happen. So there's also a look at making sure we have the staffing, both from a teacher perspective and also from the aide perspective, because there will be aides that we would need to have in those classes. So those are considerations that we would need to take into account as we're looking at potentially starting up the program.
Are we doing that? I mean, are we actively pursuing the curriculum and
No, we're not doing that yet. We're bringing to the board, here are the considerations that would need to be taken into account, and the steps that would likely need to be taken, should the board give direction to move forward with a TK program. And so we're, based on the conversations, we're bringing more information on some of these potential priorities, and then we have another slide on direction next steps that talks about where we could go with funding and with priorities, which is really our last main slide in the deck.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, so before we leave this,
Yeah.
and I do my math based on the previous slide. So 3.2 million for 16 classes, for an average of about 200,000 per classroom. So if we were to pilot 2 classrooms, or maybe 3, we're looking at 400,000 to 600,000 per year, not including some of the other costs that were on the right side.
Correct.
So a full program, at least with teaching, just teachers not including curriculum, those are the things for at least 3.2. And the gap that we have currently, as enrollment drops, it was something like 1 point, for this year is like 1.1, maybe around 1.4, 1.5, moving forward. So clearly those don't, aren't gonna match up. So it sounds like it has to be, if we're to go forward with the program, it has to be something that's smaller, or not a full program, unless we're to kind of go to the general fund.
Yeah, I think that if the board were to decide that we wanted to go forward with the full program, then there would have to be other priorities that we need to adjust to be able to fully fund it.
what if we wanted to start small?
That's an option as well. And I think that's where, when you look at, we've tried to lay out, here's generally what we would potentially have for funding that is not currently accounted for with other expenditures, that over the next couple of years that could give an idea of, and as Alan was saying, there's, this year we have $550,000, next year it's 1.1 to 1.7, I think, and then the following year it's somewhere in the range of $2 million or more. And so if you look at that, then, if you start with a smaller program, or if you say that we're gonna have a capped program, it's a certain number, then that's fundable without adjusting other priorities. So those are options that will be out there.
Because I would support it. I mean, it's frustrating to sit here and keep talking about something that is not happening. So I would support taking, what do they say, the hike of 1,000,000 miles starts one step at a time. So let's start taking that step. Do we look into what it takes to purchase a curriculum? And because that curriculum is going to be the same regardless of whether it's 20 kids or 8 kids. So could we look to get that information back and maybe float the idea to DMCTA and find out if there's any interest among the teachers about moving into that.
And to the community, how about floating the idea to the community and seeing what they want? That has not been done since I've been on this board.
But I'm not quite sure when you say what they want, what are the
Do they
parameters
want-
you're talking
Do
about?
they want this as a priority? As a funding priority? Do they want this program? Do they want to see this program in our schools?
I'm all open to whatever the community wants. I was thinking in terms of the requirements from the state to offer it. That's what I'm hearing from you, is that,
How hard?
well, it's a mandate, but it's an unfunded mandate.
Not a mandate. It's, you have to do it, no, it's only if you have, if you've got state funds,
Right.
yeah, but not if you don't have state funds.
You can look at it like that way, or
So
you
it's
can look
not-
at it like, we get property tax dollars, that's how we fund our schools, and so that's our funding.
I was just moving forward from the standpoint, based on what you've been saying, it sounded as though the community is backing this, but you bring up a good point, if the community is not behind it, then let's find that out. But, if we're gonna do it, let's do it, if we're not, let's not,
Well,
so.
can I suggest that we start with the dollars? And how we might look at it is, what are the funds available, and what could we do, okay? To me, I would not be in favor of displacing other priorities.
I agree.
Like class size, our contribution to STEAM plus, all the things that we already have. So I would say, as a principal, maybe start with, we're not going to displace any other priorities. So that means that, you know, there's X amount of money that's available, and that's the available money. So whether everybody wants to have TK or nobody wants to have TK, doesn't matter, we still have the dollars that we have, as long as we're maintaining our other priorities. And then we can talk about what a pilot program would look like, if, you know, but if we have that principle, that we don't get into a situation where, you know, we have competing priorities, we have tiers of priorities.
Right, but to the extent that it doesn't affect those other priorities, I for one would support TK regardless, because I think it's beneficial to students. Correct me if I'm wrong, I'm looking at Allison. TK is beneficial to students, just, right? I mean, in general, it's a general statement. It's been shown that transitional kindergarten is a better springboard for students. That's what I've heard, that's what the governor has said, and I'm assuming you're going to agree.
The state of California has talked about offering learning for our youngest children and how that benefits their learning in the long term. And then our work is to really identify what that high quality program looks like in our school district, how we would define that, what curricular resources would work to support that program, and then really identify those specifics.
So to the extent that we can do that without impacting the current curriculum, I would support moving that forward. Right.
Just, you have to just have a, not just a one-year view is all. So, you know, just, if the plan
No,
is
I
to move
understand.
forward with just, you know, 80% of the 25 to 30 students, that's one thing. Talk about, is it fair to have a lottery, you know, and then also what are the current 4-year-olds doing? Maybe those 4-year-olds with paid slots can slot in around if there are kids that.
Well, that's all part of the plan, sure. I mean, that's what would be worked out, but I to sit here stifling about what we're gonna do, just having the same conversation over and over again is frustrating. So either we're gonna walk down the road, or we're gonna close the gate, and go another direction.
Well, I would say that I agree with Erica, in that the priorities that currently are established, I would maintain those. I mean,
I agree.
but I mean, because there are some things that are raised, like for instance, class size, like how much that would cost. I just don't want to go in the direction of increasing our class size, and I would like to maintain it at the 25-to-1 ratio as it is.
I don't think I was ambiguous.
No, and I'm not suggesting that you were, I just don't want that to be any, you know, amongst us, to be clear about that, you know, that we consider that the current ratio is good.
Absolutely.
And then, beyond that, then if there is additional funding, which it appears like Alan has mentioned in the beginning, that there is a gap, that potentially there's additional funding that could be used for another program, then that would be an opportunity to look into this. And I think that you're right,
That's what I'm saying.
exactly, and I agree with you, so and I support that as well. I think that'd be a good idea to start small, to have a pilot program, like suggesting, and, you know, something that particularly if we're offering it to our need-based students first, I think that's something that I really would support, something that could help those that are particular in need. And then beyond that, then it's a matter of a lottery, because unfortunately, the numbers, like, we cannot offer a program right now, so.
A lottery, or, you know, just like we have right now, a paid program that, like the ECDC,
It's not a paid program. This is
the community part.
So,
Combine it with our ECDC.
Can you go down?
so before getting into this, before deciding whether we start with 1 or 16 classes, I sort of want to go back to the money question, which is, there's a certain amount of money in the budget, and we're currently paying for certain priorities, and we keep a certain reserve. That's the current stats. I don't hear anybody saying, let's cut into current programs. I don't hear anybody saying, let's drop the reserve lower. So the only other place for more money is either more tax revenue, which could be happening in the future. It could be the 1.5 million per year that we're estimating. So those are sources of new money. So we have a potential, and I'll just throw it out as a hypothetical, $1.5 million a year that we can spread to some priorities. And so what I'd like to know is, of the priorities, the size of the pie, TK could be part of that pie. What else is in that pie that staff is recommending that we need to consider? We need more money to fund something, whether it's the food program or something else. And how big of a pie can we reserve for TK? Is it for one? Can we afford 1 class or 16 classes? And then come up with what's a reasonable size of the pie to dedicate to TK versus the other things. And then we can feel like we have a comfortable decision. I'd like to know what those other new priorities that were in the list that you presented that staff is recommending that we consider in addition to TK.
That's a great segue. So if we look at potential direction and next steps, staff would also recommend, and based on the conversations, if we maintain our current priorities, then it looks like we probably have an and or between that pursue, consider, and or are there unfunded priorities the board would like us to pursue. Because if you pursue or consider 1 to 3 TK classrooms or something in that range based on that need base, or if there's, it really depends. So if you're saying, say $600,000 and it's 3 classrooms, and there'll be some other costs, especially in the first year with curriculum and other pieces, but there's other money that would go towards something else. I think the other unfunded priorities and needs relate to the couple of facilities areas. Now, will it meet that full need? No, but if we start putting something towards it, then it helps us to get closer to that need. And so, as we've discussed as a staff, I don't think there are other priorities that we would put above those facilities needs after the TK program as well. So, to your question, Alan, I think that we would say that these facility needs are the area that we would want to kind of commit some of that money towards, to save towards. If we said that you have a pie and you want to put a certain amount towards TK and a certain amount towards something else.
So if I look at the 20 million, am I going back to the project budgets and saying that I've got 54 million unfunded, I've got some other money, so I'm left with 20 million short for the 3.5 unfunded topics? Ocean, Sycamore Ridge, Torrey Hills, and Sage Canyon. That is partially.
Yes, and it's not as much as that because we have some CFD monies that will have to be spent on Torrey Hills or Sycamore Ridge. So you have a bunch of partial funded things that happen there from Sage Canyon on. And so there's not enough to do the full modernization, but there's enough to do some of it because of where CFDs and people paying their Belarus taxes, those need to go into that area where those students are served. So it's hard to paint a very clear picture when you have a number of different funding sources because you end up with these partial funding pieces.
So what I'm looking for is tangible examples that I can have a discussion with people in the community, or we can have a conversation. So for example, if I were to go to someone and say, I can increase class sizes in order to have 16 TK classes. They might say, I don't like that idea. I like class sizes the way they are. Maybe it needs to be less than 60. Okay, change the hypothetical. I would like to do something at Sycamore Ridge and it's going to cost $2 million. So I can either spend $2 million or I can have some more TK classrooms. So it's like a tangible trade-off.
Then you would need to look at the entire budget and see what is spent on everything in this district. You're picking things, but there's lots to pick from. There's lots of places
Absolutely agree, but my
to make
working
the pie
hypothesis that.
bigger for
Right.
TK.
Right, so my working hypothesis is we have today's budget priorities. Before we touch those, is there an extra source of money? We talked about the 1.5, and what could we spend it on? I agree with you that you could look at the budget and say, let's cut out X or Y to have 3 more TK classrooms. But I thought, the working hypothesis I want to start with is, what can I do with that 1.5 new money?
But you're
Before
talking about going
dipping
out
to
to
the
the
budget.
community and saying, oh, but if we do this, and that's what I'm hearing from you, is that you would be picking X or Y.
Well, I'm saying I wouldn't want to do that. I wouldn't want to pick different class ratios and
This
so
is
forth. I
kind of
wouldn't
how
want
you
to.
sell it, right? I mean, you're choosing class sizes and you're choosing STEAM Plus. That's what's been going on for ever since I've been on the board. So it sounds not nice. Sounds not pretty to add TK when you pick it that way.
But I think we can't, we have available money.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is that if we have 1.5, before I touch any other existing priorities, where can that 1.5 go? How much of that pie should go to TK versus a modernization project? That's, before we consider tapping into an existing budget priority, that's all I'm saying.
So
Sorry, can I ask what TK buys, or how much 1.5 buys me in TK classrooms? I mean, how many is that gonna give me? What's 1.5 million gonna give me in terms of the program for?
Including administrative oversight.
Yeah.
Because we presumably you're building curriculum and you're gonna have somebody in district staff.
So let's say I have theoretically $1.5 million to spend. If I wanna spend that all on TK, what does that look like in terms of TK?
Well, 5 or 6 classes. I don't have the numbers for administrative oversight and the curriculum costs yet. So, but it just the classroom costs are about $200,000. You get 7,
Yeah.
but there's probably gonna be a little bit maybe that we need to take care of in curriculum and other pieces that aren't in there. So 6 maybe is a safer number, but I haven't had time to
Right.
put any numbers
And
to
we
it.
don't have 6 classrooms though. I mean, I think we were talking about, or we had 4 teachers available this year. Is that what we mentioned previously? Sorry, there was like 4 activities and.
Do you want to say like 4 unfunded? We had budgeted for
Sorry.
177 and we realized 173
Sorry.
FTEs this year.
Sorry, maybe I'm just mistaken about some things. I guess we need open classrooms for bathrooms and.
Yeah, that's right.
We had a small number of open classrooms this year, it's something like 3 or 4. So I don't have that number right in front of me, the number with bathrooms.
But there were a lot more without bathrooms.
Yeah.
And actually, I'm glad you raised that point, Catherine, because I wanted to add to the maintaining current priorities. To me, a priority would be not displacing current kindergartners. So I don't want to have a situation where the kindergartners out of a classroom that has a bathroom or an optimal kindergarten class to make room for a TK class and have a kindergartners are disadvantaged. When I talk about my personal view of maintaining our programs and our priorities, it includes not displacing kindergartners. Now, are there empty classrooms? That's the question that's on the table. How many empty classrooms are there that have bathrooms that can be used for this program? That's the right number to me.
So
because I don't wanna get
having
into
2
that.
children that went to the hills that didn't have bathrooms in their classroom, my priority would be to give an educational opportunity to our district's 4-year-olds who aren't receiving that. And I'd be happy to have my children, again, give away the bathroom, which they never had in the first place, to have a seat for a 4-year-old, especially one of the 25 to 30 free and reduced lunch, foster youth, homeless youth, who isn't getting an educational opportunity in our district.
And we have enough room for 25 to 30 regardless, because we have more than 2 classrooms worth of availability, so that's not an issue.
Well, I disagree with your prioritization, and
I think it's interesting to use the word displacement as it relates to kindergarten, because of all the grades, the kindergartners are not placed for the next coming year, so we can't really displace them by moving them to a classroom without a bathroom. So when you say displacing them, I'm a little curious about what you're saying.
TK classrooms that are currently being used for kindergartners, that would presumably be used for next year's kindergartners, and replacing them with
But they don't
TK.
have an understanding of the bathrooms being present there anyway, because they haven't been there.
It's the program though, the program is what it is.
I think what I would like to see is I would like to have kindergartners with bathrooms. So if there are no, or kindergarten spaces that have bathrooms, and when I was,
okay, there's always a way to find not to have transitional kindergarten. I mean, if
No,
we're
I
gonna
don't-
try and have transitional kindergarten, then let's make an effort to do that. If we're not, then let's agree not to.
Thank you very much, thank you.
Because
We
I
either
think
wanna do it or we don't, we're either gonna find a way to do
if
it
you
or we're
wanna
not.
find a way to make it
Yeah.
work, then we're gonna have to be creative and make it happen. So, I mean, either we're gonna do it or we're not gonna do it.
We're gonna do it, but not at the expense of the current priorities. That's what we all
Yeah,
just
but-
agreed to.
Okay,
Okay, so,
when you talk about priorities, kindergartners with bathrooms, maybe they're priorities to some, but obviously some schools don't have bathrooms,
Well,
which I just.
They're about
so-
to, because we're about to spend all this money on Del Mar Hills modernization. A big part of it is that there's not bathrooms for the kindergartners.
It's
That's
having
why,
bathrooms for kindergarten is
Yeah.
actually the thing, like when my
Yeah.
kid was in kindergarten in Ashley Falls.
Well, I have kids that were in
Yeah, and-
kindergarten
and-
too,
and
so
they-
I
No,
understand.
and they had to go down to like the far bathroom,
But if
and walking through a hallway to go down to our bathroom, which
Yeah.
I think it would have been much more convenient had there been a bathroom for those children to use. So it is a thing, I mean, having kindergartens with that.
So I guess the question becomes, and this is something for the community, is having a bathroom for a kindergartner, one of your priorities such that you wouldn't have transitional kindergarten?
This gets really confusing.
for sure, that's what they're saying, that's what it sounds like to me, that's what I'm hearing.
I've never
On
looked
either
at
side.
bathrooms in kindergarten as one of the top priorities for the district. I've looked at class sizes, I've looked at I'm just saying.
It's just another reason not,
I don't think anybody here is
To
suggesting
make
that we're not
this-
moving forward with this. I think what I'm hearing from the majority here is that we're trying to move forward, to figure out a way to make TK possible. I think right now we're kind of boiling it down to how large of a program. I think that's kind of what I'm hearing from everybody. We all want it. For the most part, it sounds like we all want it.
Even if we have one classroom, we're doing better than we're doing.
Exactly, so my question is like, do we do one classroom? Do we do 4 classrooms? Do we do 6 classrooms? Do we do 16 classrooms? That's the question I'm ultimately asking right now. And I think that's kind of where I'm trying to get at, is like, how much money do we have and what can that money be spent on?
Well,
Because
here I
that's-
said 6, right? We could do.
and that's the thing, do we even have 6
So
open
if we
rooms?
don't have 6 open rooms, then let's at least start and not displace the kindergartners out. Let's at least start doing something. Something's better than nothing.
That's exactly what we talked about. What would a pilot look like? Instead of going total 100%, what does a good start look like? Because we like to do it, we like to think through it, we like to do it right. And I see other districts, similarly situated districts, some of the Northern California ones appear to be doing just that, starting off slow and then building it. If it turns out that we can afford 1, 2, or 3, and the bathroom situation works out, and we're not having to cut into current priorities, I'd love to learn more of, what that looks like. Can we start slow with 1, 2, or 3? It seems like we haven't.
I go with 9, one at every school, but
Sure.
I go to the full program,
Right.
you know.
Yeah, but I love, let's model it out and see what the costs are and see, can we afford it? Is the 1.5 covered? If it doesn't, would it require advocating into other priorities, which doesn't sound to be a consensus view, but you can at least model it out and say, yeah, we can't go beyond X without cutting into current budget priorities. Make it real, make it,
it's worth modeling it out, I agree. It's worth modeling it out for a few years too, because the 1.5, again, this doesn't include teachers and stuff in column, right? So you have to can't just, let's move from the kind of theoretical numbers that we have in front of us now to actual, a 3-year to 5-year model. I realize it gets less accurate further up, but at least 3 years, get to 3 years.
I really appreciate the staff is actually, thinking through what does a pilot look like? What does it start to look like? Reaching out to other districts. So I think if we just keep that positive momentum, and we get a little bit more detail and model it out, I think we can get to a solution where we can start to introduce a program that people are asking.
And I think I've mentioned this before, a priority for me would be to have an immersion TK program, because I think that that's the prime age to start, well, obviously from birth, but if you're gonna start with school-age children, TK is the prime age to start with another language.
I think starting small is a great idea. It allows us to kind of see what the demand is. So, for the first year, it's like it'd be interesting to see, like, are all 3 classes full, or 1 to 3 or whatever, are they fully maxed out? And it'd be interesting to kind of see after the first year, what's demand look like? Is it something that people are clamoring for, that they want a larger program? It's something I think we can revisit as we're doing these budget workshops in the following years. But it seems like to me that we're currently kind of saying, hey, it's okay, district, go ahead with a smaller program.
But the one thing I want to consider as we look at districts, pilot draft, and presumably to come back with, what would a pilot look like, is how do you fill spots beyond the kids that qualify for the program? I personally am a little nervous about a lottery. It doesn't seem that fair. Like, how does one kid get in and his neighbor doesn't get in? So, what are the different ways that could be done? Also doing it just by birthday doesn't seem fair, because why should some of the little bit older kids get an advantage over, so
Next year it's open to all?
there's,
It's open to all next year, so it's.
right, but if we don't have spots for everybody who would want to be in the program, I just think that it's really something to think through, how we want to do it. And I would propose that we do consider what are the implications for the ECDC, because if there are already classes of 4-year-olds that could be combined with this program, ta-da, you've got your pilot, right? So you don't necessarily have to go out with open enrollment to the whole community and do a lottery and all the kind of complications that could entail.
I'm not understanding that proposal. How does
How many-
ECDC combine with TK?
How many four classes are in ECDC?
How many 4-year-olds are in ECDC? Is that what you're asking? Yeah, but how does that combine with TK? Are you saying, like,
You move those kids together in the same, make one program for 4-year-olds, not two different programs for 4-year-olds.
okay, but, so those kids that you're saying that the kids that are enrolled in ECDC would automatically get spots into TK?
I'm not saying the kids, I'm saying the spots. I'm not saying what should happen, I'm saying these are the kind of considerations that you would want to
So let
have
me
laid
go enroll
out.
my kid in ECDC right now.
No.
So that they get a
So
spot
that's
in
not-
Here's the
TK.
question.
I'm not
What would-
understanding that.
What would happen to ECDC if what would happen to 4-year-olds in ECDC if we had TK?
What would happen to my child who's in preschool?
No,
It's a preschool.
I'm asking what,
ECDC is a preschool.
I'm asking what happens to the program, the ECDC program, not just students. I mean, Allison, what would happen with the ECDC program currently with the 4-year-olds if we in fact introduce a 4-year-old or TK for 4-year-olds?
So that would be a consideration that we have to make, what happens to the ECDC program at that age. And then, what does our ECDC program look like? Another consideration we have to make in the future is where those programs are physically held, correct? With the offices and all of that. So, it's a conversation that we need to continue to have, around how does a TK program affect our ECDC program for that age group.
But you have to look at it, like, the entire community, how the preschool programs in the community, it depends on how many seats you're offering and how many people want those seats. I mean, at the nursery school where my children attend, it would, affect, I'm sure it would have an effect, because if you're having available spots, then some 4-year-olds from that preschool are gonna come. If you're opening spots, then some of the ECDC kids are gonna come, it just depends on how many spots
No,
are opening.
I think
I'm
what
only
I'm saying
asking-
is you can't have two concurrent programs.
Yes, I'm asking this in regards to how our programming. will
Can you
happen.
not? I don't know.
Well,
If there's not enough spots, you would have to still offer ECDC, or you could still offer ECDC, because you won't have enough spots for those
I think
students.
the desire would be to take those 4-year-olds or those spots anyway, and use those for transitional kindergarten, rather than offer a 4-year-old for paid preschool.
But that's why I'm, so, if you're giving prioritization.
I didn't say that.
Okay.
Nobody's saying do
No one said
prioritization, but consider currently.
You can't have a 4-paid preschool and then offer a transitional kindergarten at the same time at the same place. So you have
Can
to.
you not?
Yeah, that's
Why
part
would
of
you-
the question. I don't know.
I don't know.
It just
I
seems
don't know.
awkward to me.
But if
It
we're
seems-
not
Seems like
offering
one
enough
more thing
spots.
for the staff to come back to us with a proposal.
I would think
alternatives.
you'd want to not have your ECDC 4-year-olds, maybe eliminate that.
I view ECDC like a private preschool. That's how I see it. It just
I don't
happens to be
disagree with
on
that.
our district's campus.
I'm just
So
saying,
you can't
offering
say-
them in the same district is a little, it
Alan's
just
got
doesn't.
Alan's got a question. Let's go to Alan's
These are
question.
great questions, and I think we may be able to get really good answers by talking to other districts that have gone from 0 to something to now, they started their journey. And I think we can learn from that. We can learn, if they had a similar program like UCDC, how do they manage the transition? How do they manage the transition? Did they use a lottery? What worked, what didn't work? I think that we have the benefit of other districts that are like ours that have already started the journey, that I think we can learn from. And so, I would recommend to the staff that if you do a little bit of that research for us, and then we can come back, and instead of spending time right now speculating what the implementation would look like, maybe we can learn from them and then really dive into what would work best for us.
Yeah,
That's
partly-
fine, but I think we also need to set some parameters to be able to provide them and say, so we're willing to offer this many, work with that number. Because if you are only offering 1 to 2 to 3, you're gonna still probably need an ECDC. There's a lot of 4-year-olds around here that need schooling.
Yeah, well, I agree that we should hear from the staff, and I think that until we see alternatives from the staff, it's hard to pick. How to weigh the pros and cons, we don't have all the information, so I would agree, it'd be great to hear that report back from the staff.
Another question of mine is we have up there 2024 to 2025, is that, we could talk about this for another year, we could talk about this for another 2 years. I mean, what's our priority, so that you all have enough time to implement this, but when will that be? What school year will that be? Will that be next school year?
And it's be done next year, next fall.
Yeah.
I think it could be done.
Yeah, if we had directions soon, we absolutely could be able to, a very strong program in place.
And just to add one more thing, because you have the question on there about unfunded modernization projects, I'm not hearing anybody say that we should use general fund money to initiate new capital expenditures. But if I'm misunderstanding, as far as the different priorities, does anybody,
I'm sorry, what was that again?
If we
like
had-
using our general fund money, like let's say we have that 1.5 million, I'm not hearing anybody right now on the board say that we should use the money for the 20 million unfunded modernization projects or the satellite kitchens.
I
just
for
raising it
one,
in
would
case
be
there's-
fine using $7 million, which was, you said 700,000 to $1 million for 7 sites from our reserves to fund the satellite kitchens. We have a big reserve compared to many districts. I know there was an average thrown out there, but there's a lot of basic.
We're 5% below the
Yeah,
average.
but
capital
that's a
cost.
range, and I've spoken with a lot of basic aid districts that have a much lower reserves, and they're funding TK, and they have great schools.
And then we have other funding sources we don't know about. I think apples to apples is.
But
hard
this is a one-time
comparison.
expenditure. I'm just saying personally, I would be willing if satellite kitchens is going to benefit,
Well, see, I'm the only one on the board that's gone through a downturn where we've had to dip into our reserves in order to exist. And I
And we've
realize.
had, since I've been on the board, we had a 14%, a 15%, we had a 25 almost percent reserve. I think using $7
Having a
million
robust-
to fund satellite kitchens is something I'd be willing to.
But let's not overlook the fact that we were just told that having that high reserve helped us get the credit rating that we got. So it doesn't
Okay.
always come down to the percentages.
Yeah, and we don't really have to debate it because 4 out of 5 of us have already said that we don't want to change our current priorities, so there's no point in going down this rabbit hole of like, how would we use our reserves?
To your point about using general fund money, but I understand that some of those modernizations can be tapped into the Belarus money that we have for those areas.
That's the 20 million was left after that money's tapped into.
Is that included in the 20 million, or is that part of the?
We modeled out, we actually had Copeland Uber do a study of what we could expect from the CFDs. So-
Yeah.
And that is included in the money, the 34 million that offsets the.
Okay.
Is there any other source, like deferred maintenance or something that can go towards those?
I would hesitate because we just have maintenance needs. So if you start saying that we're gonna spend that 3% on these modernizations, well, we're still gonna have maintenance needs. And things come up and roof leaks and that, so I don't think, we talked a little bit about that, but I don't think that it's, above board to put that into that calculation because we'll end up having to use that funding in another way.
So it sounds like there is essentially no other funding source that you can
No,
think
the
of.
restricted maintenance will happen, I'm sorry, you said deferred maintenance, I was thinking about restricted maintenance, which we have to spend every year. Deferred maintenance is in there, but again, that also would deplete it so that we wouldn't have anything to do maintenance work after the fact. And that still is fairly small. I mean, we need to continue to build that deferred maintenance. It's gonna be a benefit at the end of the month.
North City West, I think we saw another couple $100,000 is coming out of there.
Maybe up to.
Do you plan
close
on
to
that
$1 million.
money, or you just, when you get it, it's like, oh, this is nice?
We haven't, so that might be another, I'll take a look at the North City West, and see, but at most, that's maybe $1 million, which is
I
substantial.
don't think it's that much.
$1 million for a year or $1 million total? Total.
It's a one-time,
One-time.
final,
That we get in increments.
Yeah, a couple $100,000 a year.
Yes.
If I can go back to Erica's point, I agree that if we're looking at my $1.5 million pie, and we say, let's spend half of it on TK pilot, and we have another half that we could spend on, say, modernization projects. Or when you come back with more information on the modeling, and both on the cost of TK and other factors, and maybe we say we want to spend all of it on TK for 6 classes instead of 3 classes, and no money for modernization projects. So I do think it's an open question of how that 1.5 is spent, which is separate from do we dip into the reserves or do we change a current priority, which is something I don't want to get into tonight, but I'd like to at least first ask, how are we going to spend that 1.5 if it's sustainable and predictable, and how much of the pie will go to TK, and versus the other projects.
So so I'm hearing more information about some of these questions that have been brought up regarding, first of all, how many and what are some of the other priorities, et cetera. And then if we do offer TK, what does happen with ECDC? And getting some information about that from other districts who are either talking about it right now, potential of implementing TK, or have already implemented. Are there other things to bring
The
back?
curriculum.
And the curriculum, yes.
Forgive me if this is the wrong time, but I'd like to make a motion that we have a pilot program starting in 2024, 2025.
Give direction that we can pursue and then bring back for an action items and start.
For the next board meeting, next Wednesday.
So we could bring something back based on things on the.
Personally, I would be ready to take action without a lot more information, and I'm sure it's gonna take us more than next Wednesday to pull together the information. I mean, we have like all year to plan this, so.
I'd like to, again, I'm making the motion that we vote to have a pilot program for TK. That's, yeah.
I don't know procedurally we can make a motion.
Not the board workshop, but, so what we can do though, if it looks as if the board is moving in the direction, some of the things that are more time intensive that really do affect Allison's work and the work of the Instructional Services Department to put together a top quality program, we would want to know that so that we can start working on that.
Yeah.
And have our energies going in the right direction, because to spend time on this, obviously, will be
And I feel
important.
like
That's
you
what we're
said
doing.
that you want a pilot program, it seems like you have, and so have you, and so I think that that's at least a small, simple majority of us that would want to give you that green light to start working on planning.
Well, I'd like to see what we're talking about, and
Right,
Let's not jump
Like,
the
that's
gun.
the green light.
I'm just saying, I'm not saying what the pilot program, but just to say that we will have a pilot program, what that means at this point, that's not what I'm asking for, a motion to be.
I don't think we can start developing curriculum within the next month, so I mean, let's just get the information that we've asked for and take it a step at a time.
So again, I'm asking for the next board meeting that we vote to have a pilot program.
Okay.
Let's take a look at that.
I'm not
But I think-
asking you, I'm asking.
Well, I
So
think-
we're
I
asking
think-
you-
I think I kind of had a little something to do with that, but.
So you're asking that it be an action item?
I am, yes.
But,
Yeah,
Like
you
next
don't listen
week?
to GeeWah, so I'm asking.
I don't, are we gonna get the information we need
No,
by
we're
next
not,
week?
no, she's just trying to jump.
Yeah, so if I can be
All
positive
I'm
here.
asking for is that we say that we would like to have a pilot program. we don't say how many, we don't say, you know, just that we're giving the green light that they
I think
start.
effectively, that's what we've already said, yeah.
I don't wanna hear effectively, because we sat here months and months ago saying effectively, we're gonna have full-day kindergarten from day one, and that effectively has not happened yet.
So if I can try to be positive here,
Don't do that, GeeWah, don't
I
cut
feel
me
like
off
we're,
to have him speak, it's very rude, GeeWah.
so if I can be positive here, I feel like we're moving in a good direction. I don't want a motion that is gonna force the staff in 3 days, to put a bunch of information together. I'd like to have you know, do it the right way. And so, I feel like we're moving in a positive direction towards this. I don't think we need a formal motion, but if you'd like to have one, that's every right for you to bring one. I won't support something that's gonna put the staff under pressure to do something really, really quick.
And
But I am
that's not what I'm
expecting-
asking for.
Yeah.
I'm not asking for the full plan, I'm asking for us to give them the green light to start working on the plan for a pilot program.
And I feel like they are, so I feel positive
I feel
about
like
that.
they're coming back with more information to us, but we haven't said whether or not that information will be used to actually have a pilot program.
Because we don't know what the information is.
Based off the information we've been given, I think that there's a simple majority of us that would like to see a pilot program for TK.
Right. We
Perhaps
also
I'm
said that we don't want it to
wrong.
impact that there's all these unknowns, so without having the unknowns known, I don't know.
Okay, so I guess we're not anywhere near.
How long do you think it'll take to kind of bring back the information that we're asking for? Do you think it can be done at the next board meeting, or do you think we can have another?
Next week.
Would you like to hear from us that we want a pilot program for TK starting 2024-2025 school year?
Well, if there's interest in, if the board is giving direction to put together an actual TK program, we would pursue all of the other things on that previous slide. Conversations, I mean, all of those things are very intensive as far as district work, to work with.
Sure.
So we do need that direction. If it's gonna be a pilot program, we do need that direction. The other questions, we don't. I mean, obviously, we'll continue to bring back information regarding curriculum, regarding impact on numbers, budget, other
Sure,
priorities.
take
and
the rest of the
ECTC.
school year to figure out all the details, but would you like to hear from us that we want to see a pilot program of some shape and size?
I mean, just to interject, of course I do, but I think at some point, but I mean, we've all said that we need more information and that we have here, so.
I haven't said that. I don't
Except
know.
we do. And so I think that it's reasonable to expect that we should have more information, those
Okay.
alternatives in front of us before we're like, pressured to
Mhm.
jump the gun and make a decision on, going forward. But the direction is there to begin exploring this, so I think everybody can hear that. So, I don't think it's slowing anything down to actually get all that information before a final decision is made on what next year's, the
That's-
scope of next year's program looks
That's
like.
not exact, that's
I would support the program if it doesn't affect the current curriculum. And I don't know that anybody here can say that it's not going
If
to
you have one
affect the
TK classroom next year, it will not affect the current
How do
curriculum.
you know that?
They've said that tonight. What have we done here
We
tonight?
don't know about the ECDC question. We don't know about how much the curriculum is. We don't know how many, there's a lot of unknowns that we don't know that we need to know. But I would support it if this, if that, sure, but that's not necessarily what you're asking for. You want us to jump into the deep end without knowing how deep it is.
That's not at all. I'm asking that we give them the direction to put together a proposal for a pilot program. Take your time in putting together that proposal. We're just saying, I'm just saying, I don't want to speak on your behalf, that we want a pilot program for TK next year. That's all I'm asking for. I said it enough. So, or we keep coming back and having these 2-hour meetings where you give us these little bits of information, breadcrumbs, and we keep following this, and then, I don't know, it'll start in 2025, 2026, who knows when it'll start. That's fine, we can do that too.
Are you able to move in the direction of coming up with a program, bringing
If the board direction is to pursue a pilot program, that's absolutely something we can do. We've made that very clear. We know exactly what to do. We can do that. I'm hearing though that the board would like more information before giving us the specific go-ahead to put all of those parts in place.
I don't understand the difference.
I mean, what I'll say is I'm comfortable with a small program, like, because it's something like a one classroom thing, for instance, I'm just saying, starting off the bat. It does not have a huge impact, I don't think. A one classroom, starting to think about what the curriculum is, thinking about what the, facilities look like. I don't think it's gonna be a substantial impact on the budget. It's clearly can be covered within the 1.5. And so for me, I'm comfortable with saying, hey, a small program, give you the green light, go ahead with that. Exact sizing, I don't know. That's something that we can model. I mean, if it's like 1, 3, 6, I don't know exactly, but I would be comfortable saying, because I do want this program. I do think that TK is important. I do think we should have it. So I would be comfortable with saying, like, hey, at the very least, let's start a program that at a minimum is at least one class.
So yeah, that's the thing.
I would say-
If you want one, then give them the green light to figure it out. Then we work out the details. We can make votes on like how many there are and where they're located. But we're just giving a vote to say, start the process to give us more information.
I would say I would expect to be comfortable with at least going ahead with a one classroom pilot. However, it seems totally irresponsible as a board member not to get the rest of the information that we've asked for tonight before presupposing how I'm gonna feel when I see that information. So there's no reason to jump the gun because we are starting to pursue the alternatives already and
It's
we
not
have
jumping
plenty
the
of
gun.
time. And so I would be more comfortable, that's me. I'm not comfortable saying that we're gonna go forward with the pilot, but I expect that I will. I hear others saying they expect that they will. There's no harm in making sure.
To have at a minimum one TK classroom, you're not comfortable saying that that's something you would, I mean, if you have the desire to see one TK classroom, then you would be willing to say, yes, we want to have you start working on a pilot program.
I think it's responsible as a board member to embark on a major new program to add effectively a 7th grade level to our district in a thoughtful and carefully considered
Which is
manner.
what they will have the green light to do, if we
Yeah,
give
that's
them
right.
that.
It sounds like a distinction without a difference. You're gonna give us the same information if we're starting the pilot program or if we're
But
not.
then we're
starting the
actually
pilot
saying we
program.
wanna have it and we're going to
I
implement
think we
it.
all have said we wanna have it.
Oh,
I just want,
There's-
I'd like to see the information before I make the decision. I don't know. I
see
don't know
exactly,
what
you don't know!
No, I don't know what I don't know.
So,
I can't.
so I'd like to make it actionable. I'd like to make it so that we can give you direction on something specific and tangible. And in order for me to get comfortable with that, I would like to know the financial modeling of 1, 2, 3, or 6. I'd like to know if there are any constraints with bathrooms or classrooms available. Those are the two basic threshold issues for me, is the money and the facility feasibility. And once they've come back with that information, which shouldn't take a lot of time, it's not about how to implement it in the curriculum. What's it gonna cost, a little bit of refinement on the right-hand column of costs. What does it cost for 1, 2, 3, and 6? And then I think we're gonna know that we can afford, what can we afford? What are we willing to afford long-term? And I think that once I have that information, I'm very happy to support a pilot project with a scope.
I agree.
I'm hearing that, and I would be more hesitant to vote on all those nuances quickly. I would rather just give them the green light to work out all the details now, and then they present over time details to us, and we have time to pause. Right now, all those things that you're asking for, let's give them that time, and let's have time to consider it all, because it's a lot to consider. Right now, we're just telling them that we want at minimum 1 TK classroom next year, and then we'll work out all the details.
So it looks like, I'm hearing that there is some definite conversation around making this a possibility to have a pilot. So the things that are on that where we shared the TK considerations as staff, in addition to what board has asked for regarding the modeling out of the different numbers of classes, regarding what impacts of ECDC and children who do or don't get in based on whatever the criteria would be, curriculum, et cetera. I think there are some other considerations that we as staff would need to continue to work on, even before an exact direction, because I'm hearing that it is at least having some momentum. So we would want to continue to look at locations, depending on how many. We would need to be looking at schedule, hours, as well as what we would need to be negotiating with our DMCTA, and looking at when would be a higher staff and what would that process look like. So we can be continuing to work on some of those things, even absent of an actual motion yet to add the 7th grade in some capacity. I'm hearing that we should be doing that so that we would at least be prepared. Is that correct?
Sounds good enough to me. Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Great.
We good? Oh, and another question I had before was, Delmar Hills, do you guys need any more information about the directions about Delmar Hills at all? Because we kind of went over it before, and then we didn't really.
Yeah, so we will need to make a decision in the coming months as to, are we going to do it on-site or off-site? As I said, I think there was a leaning towards it. I think there was a desire for some more information in the community. So we could move forward with one idea or another. We could try to find a way to get some more information. We're working on getting closer to where the sites might be, and I'd be happy to share some of that information out as well.
Do you have that information now to share?
I do not.
Oh, okay.
We are working on that because we need to refine it to, and it's going to be scenarios. It's going to be sort of if then, because again, enrollment's going to matter in the spring because that impacts the space that we have.
In terms of the previous question that was posed to us, whether it should be on campus or off campus, I mean, I think that we last month had asked you to go get more information. That appears to have been done, and it seems like the majority of the community was interested in having an off, 1 year off-campus suggestion. So I mean, I don't, for me, I feel very comfortable with saying that's the way.
Well, I think what he said was they still had some unanswered questions before they could weigh in terms of where the kids are gonna go, what that all looks like, can we keep them together, before they make their determination as to whether or not they support one direction or not. Is that, did I misunderstand?
Yeah, so I would say that there was a feeling of not wanting more information, exactly as you said, Doug. And there was not, however, we did not get any real input of, I'd like to keep kids on campus during construction. There was a lot of talk about how do we keep kids together and how do we keep the school together. So it wasn't a resounding, let's go off campus. I wouldn't frame it that way, but it leaned much more towards, we want more information, and we had a number of Hills parents who were at the second meeting as well, and then from them, but how do we, if we go off campus, where we go, how do we do that, and we want more information about it, but it was leaning towards off. And how do we do that, and how do we know where we're going, and could you keep us all together?
Or do you need direction from us then? Or is this something that you can continue to work on and when you have more?
I think we can work on it a little. We don't need direction quite yet. As long as we get it within the next month or two, I think we'll be in good shape. So I'm comfortable with waiting on the direction.
That's something you'll bring back later. Okay.
I have something to add that wasn't mentioned. So I know, for example, we, look at Solana Beach a lot, what they're doing. They have full-day kindergarten from day one. I still want to see that in our district. It's a budget, I don't even know if it's a budget priority, but it's a educational priority. And that's what we're discussing here tonight.
Okay, an educational priority. The teachers have all said that they believe the best avenue is the avenue we've taken, and I for one trust the teachers. So,
And the community said that they want to see kindergarten from day one.
on.
I appreciate the community's input, but if you're talking about an educational priority in terms of who sets the educational priorities in terms of education, I think the teachers have their fingers on the educational side of things. Am I wrong?
I think that, based on what was shared in the past, it was that, the program and the way that it is currently constructed benefits the students and the teachers, within those first 6 weeks of school, as far as program